Welcome to the Rhino Podcast, brought to you by Rhino Records. Interviews with your favorite artists and bands about the songs and albums you love. Here's your host, Rich Mahan.
On this episode of the Rhino Podcast, we speak with none other than rock legend Alice Cooper.
I got no friends 'cause they read the papers. They can't be seen with me, and I'm getting real shot down, and I'm feeling mean. No more Mr. Nice Guy. No more Mr. Clean. No more Mr. Nice Guy. They say he's sick, he's obscene.
Hello, friends. Looking to add to your record collection with some exclusive releases? I recommend visiting Rhino.com. Click on exclusives. Check out some of these titles on vinyl you can't find anywhere else, like The Stooges Funhouse 50th Anniversary Deluxe Edition. It's an amazing collection of every take from the Funhouse sessions on 15 180-gram LPs, including a 45 RPM version of the album on 2 LPs with a fourth side etching. The Van Halen Singles Box Set 7-inch collection on red vinyl. The Doors Soft Parade 50th Anniversary Edition, including a litho. And Curtis Mayfield Keep On Keepin' On. It's Curtis's first 4 albums on vinyl from 1970 to 74. And before you click that checkout button, make sure to sign up for Rhino Insider so you get the credit for your purchase. Well, ladies and gentlemen, today we are not worthy as we have the godfather of shock rock himself on the Rhino Podcast, Alice Cooper. Throughout his 50-plus year career, he's created some of rock's most enduring albums, and anyone who attends one of his shows knows it's no mere rock show. It's a theatrical experience that blends rock and horror camp to great effect, creating a concert experience uniquely its own. And as Alice will tell us, at 72, he never thought he'd still be touring the world to sold-out crowds with not only his band, but also with his second group, Hollywood Vampires, which includes Aerosmith guitarist Joe Perry and guitarist and actor Johnny Depp. Get ready for a conversation with the nicest guy in rock. Hi, Alice. Welcome to the podcast. Where are you these days?
We're in Arizona. I've got 3 studios here in the house. And
Which one are we using today?
Today we're using the radio studio, but we have a full recording studio upstairs and a voiceover studio in there. So we've been doing a lot of stuff here.
You've been really busy during the quarantine, haven't you?
Yeah, we're really. I'm not used to having time off like this. It's weird to have 5-6 months off. It's like very foreign to me,
Well, you're typically an incredibly busy person. You're, remained at this high level of creative output your entire career. How do you do it?
Well, it's so weird. At 72, I did not think I would be in 2 touring bands.
Yeah. Right.
I figured, and I always said from the very beginning, I will retire when nobody shows up. If I do a concert and nobody shows up, that's kind of your cue to stop,
Right.
But they're all showing up, so we're good.
But isn't that the way you started? Didn't your manager Shep see you after you had cleared a room and said, I can use this?
Yeah, well, him and Frank Zappa and some of the GTOs and Steve, I think Steve McQueen was there also on acid.
Oh, no way.
Just standing there going, what? Of course, that was 1968,
Right. Well, let's start there because that new Laurel Canyon documentary that Alice and Elwood just produced premiered on Sunday, the first part.
Yeah.
And of course, you're in there. You're not a name that's normally associated with Laurel Canyon.
I lived right above the log cabin where Frank Zappa lived, and my next door neighbor on the left was Mickey. Mickey was my next door neighbor. So everybody kind of lived right in that area right there. And Frank was producing us, So I had total access down there to that place. And watching Frank work was really interesting because it was like he was kind of like a Mel Brooks. Nobody was out of bounds. Everybody got equally insulted, And I always thought that was a great thing. He was the only one that would literally that gave us a shot. Every other record company had just like laughed us out. And he saw the potential for what we were doing there.
Yeah, I can see the similarities between his approach visually and musically, and you guys too. You were looking for something different than everything else that was going on at that time.
Well, yeah, and we didn't chase the charts. I mean, we were basically a Yardbirds. We were a combination of the Yardbirds, that Friday night horror movie that TV show that you used to see, a little bit of a West Side Story. It was all of these things all combined, and we allowed that to come into our show. But basically, we were a hard rock band. It just that we allowed all those elements in. And so when it came out, it was just weird. People didn't know how to categorize it.
What was it like the first time you met Frank?
Well, it was very weird because I used to babysit with the GTOs. They babysitted, for Dweezil and Moon Unit and everybody like that. They were little, and I'd go over there with Miss Christine, and then finally Miss Christine says, "Frank, you really ought to see this band, Alice Cooper." And of course, like everybody else, who's she?
Yeah, right.
And then when he saw the band, he went, "Oh, okay." He just went, "Nobody will touch these guys except me." So yeah, and he was just starting Straight Records. He had Captain Beefheart, and he had the GTOs, and now Alice Cooper, and Tim Buckley. It was just a weird little label.
Incredible group of label mates.
Yeah, at the time, nobody cared about anybody in that group. I mean, we were just the most underdogs there ever was. And I think Frank had a natural distrust for success. You know what I mean? I think he sabotaged his own career in a lot of ways. He could have written hit songs all the time. He was one of the finest guitar players I ever heard in my life.
Amazing guitar player.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the Claptons and the Jimi Hendrixes of the world looked to Frank as being the maestro, and a lot of people did not recognize that. They were more interested in the farts and the burps and all the other things that were going on in the records. But they didn't realize that all that stuff was written. There was not one thing that ever happened on a Mother's album. Every little squeak and creak are written, So I mean, that was the brilliance of it. Yeah.
How do you annotate a burp?
Yeah, I don't know how he puts that. But if you were a drummer trying to get into that band, first of all, you had to be the very best player in LA to be in the Mothers. The Mothers were the best players in Los Angeles, and if you were a drummer, there was a thing called the black sheet. It was his time, a sheet for the drummers that was basically black. There were so many things going on in it. And I only saw one drummer that ever got through it, and that was Ainsley Dunbar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Ainsley got through it easily. And Frank said, "Okay, you're the drummer." Because nobody else could do it. I mean, it was just so complicated.
He had a knack for just finding amazing musicians. I mean, throughout the years, right? Well, of course, Steve Vai on guitar.
Right.
He brought him up.
Well, there's a great story behind that. So Steve Vai comes in, and Steve Vai is one of the finest guitar players ever. And, and he sits down and he plays with Frank, plays all the things. And Frank gets up and he says, "Yeah." He says, "I understand the Cowsills are looking for a guitar player," and leaves the room. And Vai's sitting there going, and then he comes back and he says, "Oh, you're hired." But Frank was still a better guitar player. You know what I mean? Frank was and when Dweezil put his band together, Dweezil said, "I had to quit playing for 2 years." He says, "So I could learn how to play like my dad." Because my dad didn't play like anybody else. He played orchestration parts. He didn't just play lead. He could play blues and rock and everything, but he was playing the trumpet parts and he was playing the oboe parts and things like that. And you had to totally stop and listen to what he was playing and going, "Oh my gosh, I've got to totally relearn how to play like that."
Well, he was so inventive. I mean, I remember seeing a video of Frank when he was young playing a bicycle on television.
Yeah, on the Steve Allen show. And that was very, very cool. But I really liked Frank because he had a very wry sense of humor. I actually named one of his albums, Weasels Rip My Flesh.
Oh, yeah.
I was there and I was reading one of these Argosy magazines, and the cover, it was this guy running through a swamp with all these weasels connected to it. And I went, Frank, I said, album cover. And he goes, he took it and he put it in his pocket. The next thing I know, Weasels Rip My Flesh was an album.
That's a great album cover, by the way. That's an awesome one. You have a new single out, Don't Give Up. You got a video out for it too. This is obviously it's about what's going on with the pandemic, but how did the idea come about to write this song, and how did you get it done when nobody can get together in the studio?
Well, I mean, that's the advantage of having an amazing band, and Bob Ezrin also, on producing.
Sure.
My guitar player, Ryan Roxy, lives in Sweden. Tommy Hendrickson lives in Switzerland. Hurricane Nita Strauss lives in Los Angeles. Everybody lives in another city. And somehow, technology-wise, Bob got that together and had them all play, and it worked. But I liked the idea of, all I heard was sort of, we're victims of this pandemic. And I said, well, Alice never feels like a victim. I think Alice should actually talk to the virus and literally talk to it and just tell it, yeah, you're impressive, but we'll be here long after you're gone. And it was a different tone of voice. It couldn't be sung. It had to be talked. And then when it got to the B section and chorus, then it breaks into the big chorus. But yeah. I think Alice sitting down with the virus and just kind of letting it know that we're the human race and we will survive, And that was an encouraging thing. People picked up on that and said, yeah, I'm tired of being a victim. I want to punch the bully in the nose, And that's the attitude of the song.
Our enemy is a cold, indiscriminate monster. It doesn't care if you're old or newborn. It exists to kill. You and I are nothing to it. It has no heart or soul or conscience. Do we fear it? Yeah. Do we cower before it? Hell no. We're the blood and guts human race, and we win. You know that is right, so we just gotta fight. Yeah, we're all hanging on by a thread.
I think that the spoken word parts really, like you said, they really drive home the feeling and the vibe of the words. And then when you get to the end of it, you say,
this is Alice Cooper in Detroit. Let's keep fighting. Don't give up.
What's the Detroit tag there? What's the meaning of that?
I am a Detroiter. I'm from Detroit. And the next album is called Detroit Stories. And it's all about Detroit with all Detroit musicians. Everything we did, we recorded it in Royal Oak, Detroit, right downtown. Everything we did was in Detroit. And the song will be on that album. And I wanted to include that, into that, onto that album because, it was just, Detroiters are tough Midwest hard rock guys. That's it. All the hard rock bands came out of Detroit. LA had the Doors, and San Francisco had the Grateful Dead, and New York had the Young Rascals and those bands. But the hard rock bands came out of Detroit. Iggy and the Stooges, the MC5, Ted Nugent, Bob Seger, Alice Cooper, all those bands were coming out of Detroit. So I decided to write sort of a love letter back to Detroit, but it's a hard rock album.
Oh, that's great. Can't wait to hear it. I kind of think that in some ways, especially with Stooges, like you said, like Funhouse for me, like, man, I wore that record out when I was younger.
Yeah.
Great record. I think that in a way, Detroit doesn't get the credit that it's due for really kind of being a forefather of punk rock.
Well, I mean, you could not get more punk than Iggy and the Stooges.
There's no doubt about that.
And that was way before the Ramones, way before the Sex Pistols, way before, he was street punk all the way. The very first time I saw Iggy, the band we'd already been basically run out of a rail in Los Angeles and every place else. And we said, the first place that gives us a standing ovation, we're moving to. So we get to Detroit to this big festival, 400,000 people. And, we like to watch the bands. I'd never heard of the Iggy and the Stooges, and the MC5. MC5 were like this, just energy up the butt. I mean, they were just like, and I went, wow, who are those guys? We weren't used to that, And then I saw Iggy and the Stooges. We went on after Iggy and the Stooges. And, he's up there with his shirt off and peanut butter. And I looked at this guy and I went, now you're talking. this is something now that's going to actually, it's a competition now. You know, I just saw something that made me go, what? So we got up and did our show, and Detroit loved it. They loved what we were doing. And then when they found out I was from Detroit, that was my hometown, we were that missing finger in the glove, you know?
Right.
And we became the new Detroit band.
What year was that?
That was 69, 70, right in there. But that's when I met Iggy, and I met these guys, and I just went, wow. No matter what Iggy was doing, the band just dum 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 da dum 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 da dum. And the very funny thing about this was he would go down in the audience and want to fight, right? And after a couple of shows with him, you know, he'd go to this guy, you know, and blah, 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 blah. And Dennis Dunaway said at one point he turned around and I was standing there and he went, okay, he didn't want any part of me. He didn't want any part of me, you know, because he thought I might have rabies or something, you know. But Iggy and I got to be really good friends. To this day, we're still good friends. And I'm working with Wayne Kramer right now from MC5. So all those Detroit bands never kind of ever, we always kind of like, it was a brotherhood. You would play the Easttown Theater, and it would be the Stooges, Alice Cooper, Bob Seger, and The Who in a 2,000-seat theater.
Oh, my God.
You know, because back then, big bands did not play arenas. They played clubs.
Yeah, sure.
You know, we played with the Kinks. We played with the Yardbirds. We played with all those bands because they didn't play the big arenas. Right. And, I mean, that's when rock and roll in Detroit was really rock and roll. I mean, it was just the coolest rock dungeons ever.
What do you think it is about Detroit? Because I think, you know, obviously, like, you know, San Francisco, like you named the other three big music cities in the country, but Detroit kind of flies under the radar in that respect. I don't think they get the respect that they deserve, but I mean, look at all the Motown stuff on top of that. What came together in Detroit to enable the kids to have the wherewithal to come up with the music?
Their parents worked at the Ford factories. They worked at Chrysler. Everybody's parents worked on cars.
Yeah.
Everybody had mentality was horsepower. Everybody was street.
Interesting, yeah.
There was no high echelon there. It was all street. In other words, if they went to a concert that night and they were in Levi's and boots and a black leather jacket and a T-shirt, they didn't have to go home and put that on. That's what they wore.
Right.
You know, long black hair, you know, that was just streetwear. And so they didn't, in Los Angeles, they would have gone and put all that on, you know.
Yeah.
But Detroit, that was streetwear. And the strange thing was we would play like those big rock concerts down there, you know, I mean, that would just be hard rock, sweaty, dirty rock and roll. And you'd look down and there's Smokey Robinson. And you'd look over here and there's Stevie Wonder. And you look over there and there's guys from the Temptations because they dug the rock scene.
Yeah.
And then if they were playing a show down at the Rooster Tail or something, we'd all be there.
Right.
And so there was like a real fraternity in rock and Motown that was just incredible. You know, it was like a brotherhood. If you were a musician, in fact, during the riots, anybody with long hair that was in a band could go into any black bar downtown and be totally accepted.
Whoa.
We never had to worry about whites against blacks, that whole thing, because when you were a musician, there was no color involved. I mean, you didn't see black and white. It was just you're a musician. And so that means you're not the enemy.
Wow, that's so unique. That's it really makes that scene different than all the other scenes, doesn't it? Because it wasn't really integrated like that in other scenes.
No,
San Francisco, Los Angeles.
It was mid-America. It was industrial. It was they did not want the Carpenters. They did not want any band that was, you know, in the least bit soft. When they went to see rock, they wanted rock. They wanted it hard. They wanted it loud. They wanted it angry, and that's what they got. That's what the bands were.
Yeah. So when you guys recorded back then in the early 70s, how much of it would you get all live at the same time, and how much would you go in and overdub afterwards?
Well, now I insist on that. The band I have now, in fact, in about the last 10 years, I have really insisted on going into the studio with the band and doing the song. And this includes the original band. In the last two or three albums, in fact, Paranormal, Dennis, Neil, Mike, myself.
Yeah.
The songs that we did together in the studio were all live because that was the sound we wanted. That was that band. And if there was any overdub, it was just detail stuff. It certainly wasn't. The power was in how good did it feel, not how technically good was it. It wasn't Queen. It was
right.
How did it feel?
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
And that's how I always do it now. Bob Ezrin and I always love going in the studio and with a live band and doing it like that. The only other band that used to do that better than anybody, probably anybody ever, was Paul Butterfield. The East West album was basically a live album. And that shocked me. I talked to Elvin Bishop and I said, how many takes did it take to do Work Song or East West or any of those songs? And he goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, how many takes? And he says, no, we just went in, plugged in and did it. I said, live. And he says, yeah. And if you listen to the guitar work and the harmonica work of Butterfield and Bloomfield and Bishop,
yeah,
it's impeccable. It's beyond belief. And he says, no, that was one take. They would finish it up. They just look at each other and go, okay, what's next?
Wow. That's like, and boy, the studio's fun when you're like, you don't get bogged down in stuff. It just keeps it rolling.
It's great. And I've done it both ways. You know, when we did like back in the old days, we did Killer and we never recorded like that where you'd put the drums and bass down first and then put the guitar over top of it. And that was kind of the style of doing things back then.
Right.
On Schools Out and $1 Billion Babies. Those were kind of produced albums.
Yeah.
We were just used to going and playing live, you know, and so I've done it both ways, but I really prefer having a band that can just play the song.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. Yeah. Well, speaking of bands, I've seen you a few times. I saw you with the original guys here in Nashville. I guess it was probably 3 years ago. You played at the Music City Center. Great
That's
show.
Right.
Really fun. But then I saw you at TPAC maybe the year before that or the year after that. It was right around there with your full stage production show. And your band just kills. You got 3 Guitar Assault. I think it's all the same people that you mentioned earlier.
It's all the people. It's, you know, to a point there, Ryan, Roxy, and Chuck and I've been together almost 20 years, more than that.
Wow.
You know.
Most bands don't last that long.
No. And Chuck Garrick lives there in Nashville.
That's right.
And Ryan, I mean, just is one of those great guitar players and knows the stage better than anybody. And then we got Tommy Hendrickson, who was actually an engineer on a couple of my early albums. And I heard him play, and I just looked at him. I said, "You need to be in my band." I think.
How cool is that?
Know? Then when I found Nita Strauss, I had Orianthi in the band. Orianthi was a killer blues guitar player. And she went off with Richie Sambora to do an album, and I just accidentally found Hurricane Nita Strauss.
Yeah.
I was looking for a shredder.
Right.
And I heard
Orianthi certainly is that.
She's yeah. And then when I got Nita, and she was just, I went, holy crap, who is this? You know, and she was voted Guitarist of the Decade by one of the, guitar magazines. Satriani couldn't say enough about her. I mean, which is pretty high praise.
Yeah.
And then Glenn Sobel on drums, who was voted best drummer in rock and roll. So I had a pretty darn good band up there.
No kidding. I mean, what do you look for in players? Is it just, does it have to be as much of a fit personality wise as they are musically, or what strikes you first?
That's so important.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is that everybody in the Alice Cooper band are best friends.
Oh, that's so cool.
You never, ever hear an ego thing going on. You never hear anybody stomping out of a room. You never hear that's always laughing backstage, Now, the weird thing is, same thing with the Hollywood Vampires. The Hollywood Vampires, you've got three, alpha males. You got Johnny Depp, who's used to running his show.
Sure.
Joe Perry,
right.
Alice Cooper. There has never been one argument in that band. There has never been one point of contention in that band. Every time we get together, we're just happy to be on stage and happy to be playing these songs, and can't believe we were going to just be a bar band.
Yeah.
And it
How did it start? How did the Hollywood Vampires start?
Well, I was doing Dark Shadows with Johnny, and I'd never met Johnny before.
Okay.
But I knew he was a guitar player.
Yeah.
And so I met Johnny. We got along great. He was a very cool, one of the nicest people you'd ever meet in your life. Really cared about his art. When he was playing the character, he was that character.
Sure. Yeah.
And then we had dinner one night, and I started telling him about the Hollywood Vampires. The original guys, John Lennon and Keith Moon and Harry Nilsson and all the guys. So
right.
Bernie Taupin, all of us. And he said, it'd be great to put a band together that sort of tipped their hat to all of our dead drunk friends, And right there, I said, that'd be just fun to have a bar band, just to go around LA and play bars.
Yeah.
And Joe Perry said, I'm in. So now we had those three. Duff McKagan goes, I'm in. And pretty soon we had this band, and we had all this music to go to.
Absolutely.
It had to be somebody that we knew. It had to be somebody that we drank with or got high with.
Right.
It had to be somebody that was dead. And so there were people that were saying, how come you never do my songs? I said, you don't want us to do your songs. You're not dead. So I said, be very careful what you wish for.
Yeah, right.
But, then it started out being, we played the Roxy. Everybody showed up and it was fun. Everybody came up and played. Perry Farrell,
wow, yeah.
Who was ever in town got up and played.
Right.
It was great.
Right.
The next show was Rock in Rio, 200,000 people.
Oh my gosh.
Now you have to remember everybody in that band has been in front of 200,000 people.
Sure.
Except Johnny.
Right. How do you handle it?
Johnny wanted to be sort of the back guy, the Keith Richards sort of, I want to be in the background. And we did not allow that. I said, Johnny, when it's your lead, I said, you step out and you be the lead player. And when Joe, your lead, you step out and be the lead player. And when I'm there, I'm going to be the lead. And we go back and forth. Johnny was like that.
Yeah.
And he nailed it. He was right there with
swagger.
It. Now people don't get the fact of how good of a guitar player he is. I mean, he's working with Jeff Beck right now.
Yeah.
That if you're working with Jeff Beck, that means you're doing something pretty right with the guitar,
Right, sure.
And people were shocked, when they all of a sudden heard him playing guitar and they went, he's not an actor trying to be a guitar player. He was a guitar player that accidentally became an actor.
Isn't that interesting?
So it's great. When he gets on stage, we don't really treat him as, Edward Scissorhands or any of those things. He's Johnny, our guitar player.
Right.
Yeah.
He's a real rock and roll pirate.
Well, here's the funny thing. I'll be here. Joe will be here.
Uh-huh.
Johnny's over here. So if you look at the audience, every girl's looking this way. So every once in a while, I'll go way over here and go, I just want a little bit of this, okay?
Yeah, right. You brought up that he's working with Jeff Beck, who is one of the most unique and fantastic guitar players on the planet. There's no doubt.
I would say my favorite. He's him and Jimmy Page, I did an interview with him one time and I said, I look at it this way. Eric Clapton, best blues player. Mm-hmm. Jimmy Page, best rock and roll player.
Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix, probably the most inventive. Beck, best guitar player. So in other words, he could do all of it.
Just a boy and a little girl trying to change the whole wide world. Isolation. The world is just a little town. Everybody trying to put us down.
But he was like that with the Yardbirds when he was 18, 19 years old.
Crazy.
He was so good on the guitar that it was crazy.
Yeah.
You know? So one of the funniest things was they played the VIP club in Phoenix. We were the house band there in high school. We were in high school. We were called the Spiders. So we get up to open for them. We were the Yardbirds band. We played all their songs before them. Everyone. And they're in the back. They're in the back going, yeah, yeah. I mean, they weren't going boo. They were going, oh, cool. Then they got up on stage and blew us off the stage.
Wow.
We were not getting used to getting blown off the stage, but they were the Yardbirds, the original Yardbirds.
Right.
And that would our jaws were like, what? we realized how far we had to go to get to that level. You know,
Yeah, right.
They were one of the greatest live bands ever.
That's amazing. How else have you been keeping yourself busy in the quarantine? Because like you said, you got a lot of time on your hands, especially people in the music industry that are busy doing stuff, touring, getting out there working. All of a sudden, our schedules were clear.
Yeah, I'm not used to that. You know, the great thing for me was this. We came home. We were in Germany. We were in Berlin doing a show in Berlin. And they said, you have 2 days to get out of Germany and get back to America because we're going to close the whole country. And we went, okay, we got back. And I kind of expected, well, you know, in a month, we'll get back and get the schedule going again. Not realizing that we probably won't be back on tour till November, December, maybe January, you know. So here's everybody going, what do I do now? What time's the show tonight? What's the rehearsal? When is the sound check? We're so used to doing that you had to get used to being at home.
Yeah.
You know, the cool thing was I brought my daughter and her husband in from LA. They're both comedy writers and they're both improv comedians. So they're living here. And my youngest daughter and her husband, he's an engineer. And there's 3 studios here. Sound engineer.
You've got a compound going.
Yeah. No, it's it's Camp Cooper here.
Camp Cooper.
My youngest daughter's ready to have a little girl in
right
July.
on.
Yeah, our first little girl. We got 3 little boys. Now we need a little girl.
Well, congratulations.
So it really is like a summer camp here. And the neat thing about it is every single day, I'm either doing 1 or 2 of these that we're doing.
Yeah.
Or I'm recording up. Bob Ezrin will call me up and say, you know that third song? Let's try to get that second verse again. So I'm upstairs re-recording verses for the album that's done.
Yeah. Because he has too much time on his hands and he's listening to it too much.
I know. I'm going, it's done. And he goes, yeah, but, if we,
Yeah.
So I'm literally busy all the time. I'm doing these things all the time, and it's great for me.
Yeah.
On top of it, I'm writing songs.
Okay.
And on Wednesday night is tap dance night.
Now, I've heard about this. How did you get into tap dancing, man?
One of my best friends here in town is a professional tap dancer.
Okay.
Right? I mean, really good. Fred Astaire stuff.
Okay.
And my wife and my 2 daughters are professional dancers. They can tap already, but they're like scholarship. Cheryl was with Joffrey Ballet, Hubbard Street. I mean, she's the real deal.
Okay.
So now we got all the guys and all the girls, and we got the thing there, and he's doing a virtual tap dance lesson. We all have tap shoes on, with plywood boards.
Okay.
Now my neighbors up here, all they're hearing is we're like that commercial, that Geico commercial, the clog commercial.
Oh yeah.
That's exactly what we are. So Wednesday night, I decided, hey, if you were a vaudevillian, you had to learn tap dance. So Alice Cooper has always been I'm more of a vaudevillain, but
vaudevillain. Yeah.
So I said, I better learn how to tap dance. And that was just something you'd never, ever do in your life. But why not? Do it.
Yeah. Hey, good exercise too, right?
Yeah. It's really hard. It's not easy at all.
I can imagine. Yeah, I know. So, but, exercise, I'm sure, I know you're an avid golfer. Have you been getting out and playing golf?
Every day.
Every day? Really?
I play every morning at 5:30, 6 o'clock.
Wow.
In
Before it gets hot.
Arizona, there's 200 golf courses in Arizona.
Yeah.
And the mayor said, I'm going to keep the golf courses open. So I don't care if this guy's Taliban. I'm voting for him. The golf course is open, And now, I play every day. I come back and then I start working here with this or working upstairs and everything. Yeah. And pretty soon then at night you sit there and you go, okay, whose turn is it to pick the movie?
You guys have movie night every night?
Well, there's movies that I realize that none of these people have seen. Return of the Pink Panther, Kentucky Fried Movie.
Oh, yeah.
Student Bodies, and I'm sitting there going, you've never seen that? You've never seen this movie, Danny Kaye movie, Court Jester? No. Oh, everybody sit down. And it's really cool because they sit there and especially the comedians, they're sitting there going, I've never seen this. And they're laughing their heads off going, wow, that's funny. It still works.
And it's putting it in their mind. It'll come out later at writing something else,
I'd say, you've never seen Little Britain? No? Okay. Sit down. If you like Monty Python, you're going to love this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's funny. My folks and all my family is from Phoenix, about 44th and Camelback.
That's right where we live.
Okay.
I live on 44th and Camelback.
Well, do you remember there was the Blockbuster right there on 44th and Camelback?
Yeah.
One time I'm in there picking out a movie to watch it, and I'm looking in front of the comedies, and I'm looking at the Mel Brooks movies, and this voice over my right shoulder says, oh, that's a really good one. You got to get it. And I turn, and it's you.
What was it? It was a High Anxiety?
High Anxiety, baby. Yeah.
That was one of those movies that a lot of people missed. And it was one of his funniest movies,
I think I'll have a cookie.
Yeah, right. No fruit cup.
No fruit cup. Cloris Leachman is awesome in that. Yeah.
Nurse Diesel, yeah.
Arizona, besides golf, known for the best Mexican food in the world.
Los Dos Molinas.
Los Dos Molinas, that's a good one.
There's two kinds of Mexican food. There's the tourist food.
Yeah.
That's the ones that everybody goes to and you go, oh, this is Mexican food. The people that live in Arizona go, no, it isn't. The place you want to go is down here and you look at this place and go, I wouldn't go in there.
Oh, no, that's where it's good.
The best Mexican food. Those are the places you're looking for.
What's your order?
Oh, man, it's all the same.
Yeah, crunchy or soft.
Exactly. It's beans, it's cheese. It says, in what form do you want it? It's basically all the same.
Yeah. We haven't even mentioned that you have a nationally syndicated radio show, Nights with Alice Cooper, and a podcast that's a spinoff of that.
That does keep you busy. I mean, the nice thing is with doing a syndicated radio show and Pro Tools and a computer is that I can do my show from an airport in Russia somewhere.
Yeah.
I can do the show from anywhere, from hotel rooms, from airplanes, from tour buses. And a lot of times we do that. And I love the idea. I had somebody said, your show sounds so, the review said it was totally haphazard. And I went, thank you.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Right.
I want it to sound like Alice is talking to them wherever they are in the world. And I make mistakes. I do all kinds of things. There's all kinds of things going on that are right and wrong. And I never try to sound like a disc jockey, Right. And I get to play what I want to play.
Yeah.
And I have all the backstage stories. I mean, I have like a library of backstage. I always tell people, name somebody. If you say Keith Moon, there's 500 stories about Keith Moon.
I totally want to hear a Keith Moon story. You got to lay a Keith Moon story on me.
Okay. All right. Keith Moon was everybody's house guest in Los Angeles. He would come into town and with his suitcase and knock on the door, and Keith was with you for 2 weeks. Now, that 2 weeks was exhaustion because he was a little kid. He was a little kid that needed Ritalin, but the sweetest guy in the world. And, so my wife and I have been married 1 year, and we come home one day, open the door. I'm not kidding. There's Keith Moon in a full French maid's outfit with a duster. Oh, hello. I have dusted the whole house. may I have the night off and all this? And my wife goes, who is this? And I go, greatest drummer ever lived. Hi, Keith, how you doing? Oh, I am fine. So that day he was a French maid. So after about 10 days, my wife is going, I love Keith, but it's time to move on.
Yeah, right.
He was going to go to Harry Nilsson's house next, and then Ringo, and then,
Yeah.
And so she says, make an excuse that we have to leave, and we'll see him over at Harry's house, right? And so I said, okay. So I said, hey, we have a meeting with our lawyers, and da-da-da-da. And he's going, oh, can I go? And I'm going, Keith, it's a lawyer's meeting. You hate this. You're going to hate this. Okay, all right. Like a little kid.
Yeah, right.
So we're driving down, Benedict Canyon, and Cheryl's driving because I drank a little bit then. And the next thing I know, I just see this. Hello. He's on the roof of the car.
Oh, God.
And Cheryl goes, ah, and she slams the brakes on, and he almost goes off the thing. She goes, get in the car. Like a mother, get in the car.
Yeah, right.
And he gets in the car, but he was so funny. He was so much fun. But I swear at the end, now that's one story. I could tell you 100 more stories.
Oh my gosh.
And I could name you everybody in rock and roll that could tell you 100 different ones.
Yeah.
Because for Keith, that was Tuesday.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Being on top of a Rolls Royce going down, the vampires would all meet at the Rainbow every night.
Uh-huh.
And they would go up to the roost of the vampires, and Harry would be there and Lennon would be there. All the guys would be sitting, waiting to see who Keith was going to be that night. And doors would open up, and there's the Queen of England.
And
hello.
Like, scepter, crown.
He'd go to Western Costume and rent the entire outfit. He had a 1927 Rolls Royce that he took all the seats out of it, and he put a throne in the back of it, right? So when he went down Hollywood Boulevard, he could come up out of the roof as the Queen of England. Hello. Hello. I mean, certifiably insane, truly.
Yeah, but I mean...
There's been so many people trying to do movies about Keith, and you just can't capture it because every day was a different story that somebody's going to tell.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Did you guys ever get to jam?
Oh, yeah. We'd be playing in Detroit, and Neil Smith was the ultimate rock star, our drummer.
Okay.
He was 6'8". He had blonde hair down to his waist. He wore all glitter. His drums looked like he would find out how many drums Keith had and get one more. So he would say, how many drums do you have, Keith? And he'd go, 31. He says, I have 32. So one night we go on before The Who, and at the end of the show, there's this drum thing that goes on and on and on and on and on. And all of a sudden there's another drum thing because Keith joins in. Now there's 68 drums up there, and it's great. I mean, it's really great. At the very end, it stops. Neil looks over at Keith, gets up on his stool, stands up. Now he's like that statue of Christ in Rio de Janeiro.
Okay, yeah, sure, yeah, right.
And he puts his hand up in the air and just twirls his stick like that. And even Keith went like this. Wow. That is like the ultimate ego, which was great because that's what Neil did. Neil played it to the hilt. Yeah. That I'm a $1 billion baby, and I am the ultimate platinum god. But off stage, he was hysterical.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
yeah.
So he got one up on Keith on that one.
Yeah, I can't imagine. That must have been. I mean, don't you wish there was a camera rolling for all of this stuff all the time?
Yeah, and not that we didn't have that then.
Right.
Everybody wishes there. I would have died for that piece of film.
Oh man, amazing.
Yeah. And that doesn't happen anymore, unfortunately. I the one thing that I hope happens with this whole thing is that the rock dungeon scene starts again with young rock bands playing 1,000-seat place, good hard rock bands that go in there just to play. How much we make a night doesn't matter.
Yeah,
we're going to play.
Right.
I just want to get up on stage and play. I want that energy from young rock bands now. And I think that this might be the time when that happens. In other words, all of the BS is gone. We're just a rock band. And that's how I saw Guns N' Roses first time.
Yeah.
They were in a bar, and I just went, holy crap, who are these guys? You know, there's a lot of bands, but then there was that band that was, wow.
Yeah. It just blows your hair back.
Yeah. They had everything. Wow. They had the whole package, you know.
Yeah. What do you think touring's going to look like post-pandemic? I mean, we're not going to be able to jump back and do it the way it was. It's like you said, this whole thing has kind of hit the reset button.
I think that, you know, once this thing is gone, what's to keep everybody from going back to concerts? We're back to where we were. Right. Except that we don't have a coronavirus. Yeah. So what would stop everybody from going back and making concerts the way that they used to be? I mean, unless another virus comes along, but for right now, I don't think people are going to elbow forever. You know, I think you're going to go back to what we were. I don't think it's going to start like that. I think it's going to start a lot lower, and you're going to watch the bigger bands playing smaller places and let it grow to what it is.
I hope so. I love seeing a great band in a nice theater. It's just, there's no better experience, man.
If we had our choice, I mean, we played the big outdoor shows, and normally we're going to be playing places 5,000 to 10,000 people. But I much prefer playing a 2,500 seat theater in the Midwest. That's an old movie theater, because our show it's a theater piece. Yeah. It's a hard rock piece.
Oh, I mean, absolutely.
We're never going to water it down. You saw it.
Oh,
And that works on a big stage, but it works so much better in a theater.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you see every detail.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
So for us, we every once in a while go from doing arena tours, and all of a sudden I said, next tour we're doing all theaters. And everybody goes, oh, that's cool. That's going to be cool.
They sound better too.
And it makes it more compact. It makes it more pressurized. You know?
Well, Alice, thank you so much for your time today, man. Great talking with you.
Thank you, man.
Lines foam on my face and hands. Lines foam from the ups and downs. I'm in the middle without any plans. I'm a boy and I'm a man. I'm 18 and I don't know what I want. 18, I just don't know what I want.
Thanks very much for tuning in. Don't forget to listen and subscribe on iTunes so you don't miss the next Rhino podcast. Producer for Rhino Entertainment, John Hughes. Produced for Rhino Entertainment by Rich Mahan Promotions. All rights reserved.